Ready? Okay, Neil here again. Basically, these are the moulds I'm just showing you here of how, when you're actually casting resins, be it resins or worthless wood, coffee beans, rice, seed pods, you name it, you can cast it, not a problem. I guess this is what I started with, Tupperware containers. I'm sure your missus has probably got heaps of them and she won't miss one or two. Cough sputter, don't get caught. I've been using this for 6 years and it's still going strong. It's getting a little bit brittle, but basically fill it up, give it a tap, and out comes that size. Now that for me does 3 blanks quite easily. You can do, if you fill it right to the top, 6 smaller ones, 6 small half tanks. But I don't bother, I just go for 3. That's actually brass filings that I got off the metal lathe when I was doing some new centres, and that'll be basically 3 perfect 22mm square blanks. So, and again, it just sits in there like that. I use these for leftover resins. I'll always have leftover. One of the things I love doing is seed pods, but also rice. And leftover resin in rice goes really well. I'll show that to you this afternoon. It has to be a special rice though, it's a special slow cooking rice. Otherwise the rice actually starts to cook and it goes this transparent horrible stuff, but use the right rice, it's good. I then went from there to other bigger containers. Again, these are just plastic. Cast it how you like, give it a tap. The biggest problem with most of these containers is they have a round bottom, and getting them to square is a real problem. And so this one is pretty good, it's pretty square, but you'll find most of them have a real big radius and you waste a lot of resin. I then started making my own. This is the first one I ever used. I made 2 of them. It's made with 6 tubes of silicone from the local hardware over a mould, pushed in, and then 2.5 months to set. Takes a while, very slow process. And as I've found with worthless wood, I originally made it to the right size of the blank, but unfortunately you need it bigger than that because under pressure the resin goes down. So I then used a bit more silicone to build up a well over the top. That worked well for 2 years, so, and it's still usable, but there are better forms. I then went to pour my own silicone. Barnes has a few products, and likewise Fiberglass International. Again, I've done this so that there's the blank size in the bottom and then a well size for extra resin, so that under pressure it'll soak in. I've done these individually, so I can cast 1 or 4. That one I tried going a bit thinner on the resin, but I find that flexes too much. I've then got a few round ones. These are for round casting. I find works well with Banksia, pine cones, anything where you can get air trapped. The verticals work better, except gum nuts. Gum nuts I still do in a horizontal, but I mix them before I put them down, so we'll go through that. But basically, and I'll show you the technique of how to use this. This is just basically a weight that holds whatever you're casting down to stop them floating away, and that's basically made with dowels, and I actually coated it with a bit of silicone so they don't stick too well. You'll find a little bit stick on, but they don't stick to the casting. And then I just put a weight on top of some description, so that really just sits like that on top of the units. This is the Barnes is super hot, heat resistant silicone, very stiff, doesn't deform at all, and that will last a lifetime. Again, a holder over the top to keep the products down, and I will be using this one today to show you how it works. This one's harder to get the blanks out of when they're cast because it is so solid, but you just basically push very firmly to get them out. This one here has a is quite flexible, much more flexible than this rubber, but as you can see I got a bit over enthusiastic pushing the blanks out and my thumb went straight through it. So I've recast that with a bit more silicone over the top. But I just used a black tube of silicone I had handy. This again, same product, this is for the smaller blanks. And I was doing small banks here for the slimlines. This is what I use and I do a lot of it at the same time. So same process, works well. I've then cast my own solid blanks for block casting. This one was a disaster because when you cast the silicone, John will give you a demonstration shortly, you actually use a debonder or what do you call it, John? The
release agent.
Release agent, thank you.
Yep.
And guess who forgot his release agent? And they say silicone doesn't stick to anything. Well, I can use for you, if you don't use release agent, it does stick and it sticks well. So I actually had to cut this off every inch, and that's why there's big carvings out of it. The other problem I had with this old mould is that I actually cooked it because it was taking so long to go off, and the silicone boiled. And so lesson number one, don't try and post cure your silicone, it doesn't work. But I then sliced up the boiled silicone, cast it with other silicone, and it's then all joined together and recast. You can use scrap silicone. These are the ones I buy from America now. Bloody good product. It is a soft mould though, and sometimes under pressure these bow out a bit. And they are made to the height of a blank, so for me it needs extra depth, and I'm probably going to pour some extra silicone on the top of these or make my own. There's a few block ones. This is what I've done to help with the bowing problem, which is just screwing a few bits of timber together to help hold it square. Works a treat. The problem you get into is it then doesn't fit in your pot, so you've just got to be careful of that. These are cast in situ ones where you actually use the tube. You put your tube in there. This is for things like glitter casting, for labels, for watch parts, feathers and others. You actually got them on the tube, so you put the tube in there, hold your rubber stoppers from either end, and that'll seal it. And they work well, and the advantage of these ones is you can cast under pressure, but most times you don't need it. But as you can see, it's a soft rubber, so it can split, so you do have to be careful handling those. This is another one of his, which is full-size blanks, so similar to these, only full size, and he's got two different sizes. One is the smaller 19mm and two of the 22mm diameter, and that's what he calls the mix cast. This is a big lump of resin. If you're thinking of buying these, they're cheap as chips. These are only 20 bucks. These ones, what, 35, 40 or whatever. Yeah. But you can put, I think I ordered in a big box 4 of these, 4 of that size, and I think I ordered 10 of various sizes for all the different pen tubes, and I got some for others. So get together with some friends and do a bulk order of some description.
Who'd you get them from?
Sorry?
Who'd you get them from?
The link's on the Australian Forum site. I'm afraid I've forgotten his name, but he is a member of the IAP forums in America. This is another one that... No, that's actually a supplier.
No.
The guy that actually does them, I think there's 2 of them, isn't there? There's
Two. One's now handed it over to the other one.
That's right, yeah.
So
this is the other type, which is what they call a resin saver moulds. This is run by New London, who's a member of our forums, and he's a member of the IOP as well. And this is the other type, where the plugs are already there, and again you put in your tubes. These can be cast up to 20 psi without any trouble, but any more than that and the resin just gets into the tube and fills it up. But like I said, you rarely need that. I've actually cut off a couple of these lugs so I can use different tubes, and I actually cast my own silicone plugs, put them in the tubes and hold them with needles in place. This is another one, just of a different size. They come in all shapes and sizes. These plugs don't belong with these ones, and they're a bit grotty, but that's the way I live. The other way, if you're cheap and nasty, look, Malamone works a treat as a mould. This one's just glued together with hot melt glue, and this is actually one I'm going to do this afternoon, which is a pepper grinder blank. These are too big to put in the pressure pot, so it's a matter of trying to use vibration as much as you can in thin resins, but you do multi-layer casting, and what happens as it shrinks, the next pour you do fills the cracks and shrink holes and keeps going. But I'll show you that this afternoon. Sorry, this is another one. This is a made out of an old cutting board, a very thick cutting board, cut on a CNC lathe, and these are for the long 10-inch tubes. Be careful if you're thinking of buying 10-inch tubes off the internet. They are available from some sites. Not always the right size for the pens. 7mm, not a problem. These indeed are John's.
The one that's in is a cigar pen.
A cigar pen,
You can get those.
which are fairly easy,
all the
but
rest
you
are
can't
suspect.
get a Sierra. You can't get a lot of. They'll sell you different size tubes, but they don't fit the kits we get in Australia. So just be wary of the size and make sure you're ordering the right size.
So they're made for the American market.
And some, I don't know what they're made for at all, because I haven't found it.
Okay.
I bought basically 10 tubes of every size there was at one
Gotcha.
stage when I did a big order from America. And out of those I could use 20 tubes, and I've still got 100 in there I can't use because they don't fit any kit that I've ever had. We'll cast this one today, but that's about it. And you should pre-paint your tubes because there are small gaps in the wire, and every now and then they show through. And when you cast them, it magnifies it, so it's horrible.
So when you say pre-paint them in resin,
No,
No,
the
just
tube itself
the
underneath.
tube, the
tube
tube,
itself,
sorry,
yeah.
Even with the chrome, it's
You
better to
can
have
use nail polish, you can
Do you have
use
to pre-coat the copper, or do you just cast that straight up as it is?
cast straight over.
Yeah, no.
Sometimes
But the-
I actually
the tube
spray
is
this.
painted, though.
Yeah,
Sometimes I spray that with an acrylic
right.
because it helps fill the gaps in
Yeah.
and you get less trouble with the air bubbles. But I'll always paint these first with resin with a paintbrush
Yeah,
before I cast them, and that way I know there's already resin in those little
Into
gaps.
the grooves, the gaps.
Go through that later on.
So where do you get this from?
The copper,
Yeah, the
that's
copper.
an earth strap, and
It
you can,
comes flat.
it comes flat.
Buy it off eBay from Hong Kong. Cheap.
And I've got some carbon fibre inside, and you
Yep,
can
got
do
a
pretty
few bits in
colours.
there.
You can also use stainless steel cable, which is part of a water tap system.
Yeah, I've seen them ones. Yeah, that's got a bit of copper ones coming.
Yeah.
You got to be
Never
careful with the
seen
copper because they do bend and get damaged easily. And
So it actually comes with a tube, or do you wrap it around the tube?
it is a tube,
slid on the tube.
Oh, okay.
but it's a flat tube.
It's a flat tube.
Yeah, and sometimes you can still see that flat when they are
Yeah, you do.
stretched.
Look, that's how I get it.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
Just show it up to the camera. Shows what we're talking about. Just a strap.
See it?
Yeah, it's
You've
for the
got
copper
a-
one.
okay.
But you see, it's quite a big mesh, so you've got to stretch it to make sure it's firm on the thing, because otherwise you'll still see those bends. They look very good.
Yep. John, that's me. Gordon Puss on the forum. I'm about to do my first demo of something that I've only done once before, so this could be chaotic. What the idea is here today, there are two moulds I'm going to make. This one here, I don't know if you can see that. I just knocked up. A picture of that
Okay,
is
just
supposedly a replication of this particular mould, which Neil has demonstrated for the rubber plugs. And I've had to do it because I'm going to do a Majestic watch parts pen, and it's the biggest tube that I've got, and none of the moulds I've got will do it, so that's why we're making this bigger one. So first up, we've got the mould, and this one is just to make a standard block mould up for other purposes. Now, the first thing we need is quantities. Well, I've opted to use a glass jug because it'll clean out easily afterwards. So I've calculated prior to this that I need 500 mils to do those two. So I'm going to zero this. Right, we've now got zero grams on the scale, so when we put our 500 mils in, we'll know how much we've got. This is some silicone rubber that I've just got off eBay to give it a try. We've used various others. It's fairly cheap at this point in time, so if you can see that, it's a pretty thick, milky, gooey stuff. Now, it's going to take all of that, plus because I've used a bit. Let's see, mould. Pretty viscous, isn't it?
Is that from Australian eBay you got?
Yeah,
that?
yeah. Came from Victoria. I think it was about $32 for a kilo, which is that's with the. Try and hurry this up a bit.
Pink sort of stuff, isn't it? Yeah.
Before I get too carried away here. That's only 300. Just put my tin, put that aside. Right, no. One more operation done. Another. So we've got 500 mils is 542 grams. So that's the trick with this, is you've got to do it by weight, not by millimeters, you know, which I did at first. So many mils doesn't compare, because the weight of this stuff is different compared to the weight of that stuff. So we've got 540, we're going to do 2% because the first time I tried this I used about 4% and it went real quick. See, quick calculation, 11 mils, does that sound good?
Fair enough.
11 grams, sorry, we'll get it in a minute. So I've got a different set of scales, this one only goes up to 300. We'll go to, you get them.
Did you say it was
This stuff,
540?
no?
540, is that what you said?
Yeah.
That's 10 point, that's 10.8, yeah.
But you're supposed to use 4%. John's
I got-
already
I got-
cutting it down,
Okay,
hoping
well,
it
it,
won't.
it recommends 2 to 5%. I used 4% the first time and it set real quick. You see, it's not going to take long to start to set up. This stuff's pretty poisonous apparently, so
That's why you're supposed to have gloves.
it's supposed to have gloves. Yeah. I try not to lick my fingers after I eat the cake.
Try not to serve the cake too close.
There we go. Oh. Well, now we've got 0. All right. Stays back right. It's going to be enough.
But that bottle was for a whole container, wasn't it? Or was that
is it one
you've used some
bottle per-
already?
Is it one bottle per tin, is it?
Yeah, well, I've used 1 tin and a bit for one
okay,
bottle.
Yeah.
I've actually used 500.
Yep.
I've used 600, so I'm actually putting less in than what they recommend. Okay, so we've now got 11 grams. Right. I'm advised that we should do this. So I'm just going to put a bit of release in here. Wet enough?
Make sure of it.
Well, I don't know if this dries, but anyway.
I'm going to read the instructions, Mark.
Can you just hold that bottle up?
Sorry?
Can you hold that up?
Oh yeah. Mirror? Not too sure where I bought this, because we buy things all over the place and I lose track. Do you get her? Yep. Okay.
Could you have used cooking spray in there?
Yes, you can use olive oil. You can use a lot of different sprays. In fact, I used to use old boiled linseed oil. And that's how I measured how much silicon I'd need. I'd fill up the container with boiled linseed oil, then pour it in the container, and that's how I know how much silicon I use. Unfortunately, that then seals the thing, and the boiled linseed doesn't work twice. It'll only work once.
Probably going to need this to be level somehow before I pour it, but
Pour it in, we
I'll
can.
get you some lollipop sticks.
We'll move it later on, mate, once they're poured.
Alright, so we're ready to start. Hey! Had to pour it quick. Lost a little bit.
I'll move it to the Bansil table once it's poured in.
Try not to fill it all up with bubbles because they don't tend to rise too well in this stuff.
This is where you could use vacuum to get rid of the bubbles once it's mixed.
Although it doesn't seem to be generating too much in the way of bubbles.
As long as you're careful when you're mixing it, that you
It's stirring.
stir it. The advantage of this silicon is it has a blue dye, so you can see when it is actually mixed.
Yeah.
The product I use is white, and I actually add green dye so I can see it, because I had troubles the first time.
Alright. I reckon that's enough. Okay. We're not going to have a lot of time here.
Okay, pour 'em in.
Now we want a little bit in this one first because
When you pour, usually pour from one corner and let it flow.
trying that.
And if you are going to pour it in different spots, pour it where there's already silicon. Don't get ahead because you'll trap air.
So let the silicon flow over itself.
Yep.
Yeah.
Could be very easy to overfill. It is flying.
I'll wait till it does it.
Pretty much stays as it is. So, not quite going to be enough, but
I can tell you haven't done much cooking.
no, definitely not.
Yeah, I've not seen it.
Okay,